He always arrived at the small cafe just as the sun was starting to set. The warm glow of the evening light poured through the windows, touching the polished wooden floors and the simple tables that lined the room. The place was quiet at first, just the soft hum of the old refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. He liked this time of day, when the world seemed to pause, and he could find a moment of peace before everything turned noisy and busy. He had been coming to this cafe for years, ever since he had discovered the old piano in the corner. It was not a grand instrument, but it had character. The keys were a little worn, some sticky, some chipped, but it still played music beautifully when touched with care. He loved music, and this piano felt like a friend he could speak to without words. Often, he would sit and play, letting the melody carry his thoughts and feelings across the room. The music was his way of understanding life, a language he could trust. One evening, as he adjusted the bench and prepared to play, he noticed her. She was sitting at the piano, her fingers moving gracefully over the keys, creating a melody that was both joyful and gentle. She had a presence that filled the room without needing words. He stopped for a moment, letting the sound wash over him. There was something about her playing that felt familiar, like a memory he had forgotten but was trying to hold on to. He watched her from across the room, feeling a quiet admiration that he could not explain. She noticed him too, not immediately, but gradually. Her eyes lifted from the sheet music, and she gave a small, warm smile that made his chest tighten. He returned it hesitantly, unsure if she knew how much her presence had already touched him. It was a smile that invited conversation without saying a word, a bridge between two people who had never met but felt a connection in that quiet corner of the cafe. After she finished her piece, he found himself moving closer, as if some invisible force was guiding him. He cleared his throat and said something simple, something about how he enjoyed listening. She nodded, a little shy, and thanked him. That was enough to start their first conversation. It began with music, with the piano as their shared language, and slowly moved to life, dreams, and small everyday things. Each word built a connection, gentle and steady, like a rhythm that neither could ignore. Days turned into weeks, and their meetings became a quiet ritual. He would arrive in the early evening, and she would already be there, sometimes playing, sometimes just sitting and sipping her tea. They talked about the pieces they loved, the composers who inspired them, and the stories behind the songs. He shared memories of his childhood, of the music his parents played at home, of the quiet moments that had shaped him. She listened with patience, her eyes attentive, her hands occasionally hovering over the keys, as if she wanted to play what he felt but could not yet hear. Sometimes they played together. He would start a simple melody, and she would join in, weaving her notes into his, creating a harmony that seemed to float in the air. The cafe staff noticed the music, often pausing in their work to listen, and the few regular visitors would stop, enchanted by the unexpected beauty of two strangers connecting through sound. For him, these moments were magical. The music was no longer just a personal refuge. It became a conversation, a bond, a way to understand someone else without needing words. There were times when she talked about her life, her dreams, the places she wanted to see, the stories she wanted to write. He listened, offering encouragement and sharing his own hopes. They discovered shared joys, a love for quiet mornings, the comfort of a cup of tea, the thrill of discovering a song that spoke to the heart. There was a simplicity in their friendship that felt profound, a sense of being understood without the pressure of needing to impress or explain everything. One evening, as the first snow of the season began to fall, he arrived at the cafe to find her already there, looking out the window at the gentle flakes. She turned to him with a smile that warmed the cold air between them. He joined her at the piano, and they played together as the snow fell outside, each note mingling with the quiet rhythm of the winter evening. The cafe felt like a small world, isolated from time, where nothing mattered except the music and the shared presence of each other. He felt a happiness he had not known before, a contentment that was rare and precious. Their friendship deepened, and with it came a quiet understanding. They did not need to declare feelings or make grand gestures. Their connection was in the music, in the small glances, in the shared laughter when a note went wrong or a melody took an unexpected turn. It was simple, yet it was enough. For him, she became a part of his evenings, a reason to look forward to the end of the day, a light in the familiar comfort of the cafe. Then, one evening, she was not there. He arrived, expecting the usual warmth and the familiar sound of her piano, but the seat was empty. The keys were silent, and the cafe felt different, colder, as if a part of it was missing. He asked the staff, but no one knew where she had gone. A quiet worry settled over him, an unfamiliar feeling that gnawed at the edges of his heart. The next evening, he returned, hoping she would appear, hoping it was just a temporary absence. But she did not come. And the evening after that, and the evening after that, the piano remained silent, waiting. He continued to play, though, letting the music carry his thoughts and his hope. Each note was a whisper, a question, a wish that she might return. The melodies they had created together echoed in his mind, filling the space she had left behind. He remembered her smile, the way her fingers moved over the keys, the laughter that had filled the room. It was all he had, and it was enough to keep him coming back. Even in her absence, she had changed something in him. He saw the cafe differently now, noticing the small details he had overlooked before. The way the light hit the walls, the subtle hum of life around him, the way music could fill empty spaces and hearts alike. He began to understand that waiting was not just about hope. It was about remembering, about honoring the connection that had become a part of him. The piano became more than an instrument. It became a symbol, a reminder of something beautiful that had entered his life, even if only for a short while. As the days turned into weeks, he found solace in the routine. He would arrive at the same time, sit at the same piano, and play the pieces they had shared. Each evening, he closed his eyes and imagined her there, imagined her laughter, her presence beside him. The music carried his longing and his quiet wish for her to return. People in the cafe began to notice his devotion, the way he played not just for himself but for someone who might never come back. Some smiled, some nodded in quiet understanding, and some simply let the music wash over them, connecting to something larger than themselves. He never knew what had taken her away, and he did not ask. The questions were there, lingering in the back of his mind, but he chose to focus on what he had experienced, on the beauty of their time together. He had learned that moments, even brief ones, could leave lasting impressions. He had learned that music could speak where words could not, and he had learned that hope, fragile and quiet, could give purpose to even the loneliest of evenings. The seasons changed outside the cafe window, and he stayed, a constant presence at the piano. He watched the leaves fall, the snow melt, the flowers bloom, and each evening, he played. Sometimes he imagined she would walk through the door, her smile lighting up the room as before. Sometimes he played just for her memory, letting the music honor what had been. Each note was a thread, connecting the past and the present, weaving a story of friendship, of connection, of waiting with quiet dignity. And so he remained, sitting at the piano, playing the melodies they had discovered together, hoping that someday, somehow, she would come back. The cafe was his world, the piano his companion, and the hope of her return his reason to continue. Every evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, he let the music speak for him, a silent promise that he would be there, waiting, wishing, and remembering the joy they had shared. The days after she left were the hardest he had ever faced. Every evening, he arrived at the cafe, hoping to see her walk through the door, hoping to hear the familiar sound of her laughter or the gentle touch of her fingers on the piano keys. But she never came. The seat beside the piano remained empty, and the music that had filled the room with warmth was gone. He sat at the piano, letting his fingers move over the keys, playing melodies that reminded him of her. Sometimes he played the songs they had discovered together. Sometimes he played tunes that were his own, trying to express the emptiness he felt inside. The music became both his companion and his comfort, a way to survive the silence she had left behind. He remembered the day she had left, the way she had hugged him briefly and smiled, promising nothing but leaving everything behind. There was no explanation for her sudden absence, and the lack of answers was like a shadow over his heart. He wanted to ask, wanted to understand, but the words never came. He knew she had her reasons he might never know, but still the questions lingered. He could not stop thinking about her, and even when he tried to focus on other things, she was always there, a presence in his mind and in the quiet corners of the cafe. The staff noticed his struggle. They watched him sit at the piano every evening, a solitary figure surrounded by memories and melodies. Some brought him tea, placing it on the table without words, a small gesture of kindness. Others would pause for a moment to listen, letting the music carry them away from their own worries. Strangers who had once seen him play with her began to recognize the sadness in his eyes, and some would smile softly, as if to say that it was okay to wait, to hope, and to remember. He did not mind the attention. In fact, it reminded him that even in absence, life continued, and the world was still capable of quiet kindness. At first, he tried to distract himself. He wandered the streets after leaving the cafe, walking aimlessly, looking at the city as if it held answers. He visited parks, museums, and bookstores, hoping that something would fill the empty space she had left. But nothing could replace her presence. The melodies they had shared kept echoing in his mind, and every familiar song reminded him of the evenings spent together. He realized that it was not just her absence that hurt. It was the feeling of having something beautiful taken away, something he had begun to believe would always be there. He began to notice small details around the cafe that reminded him of her. The way the light fell on the piano keys, the scent of her favorite tea, the little cushion she used on the piano bench. These things became symbols of her, small threads connecting him to the time they had shared. When he touched the piano, he felt her presence in his fingers, and when he looked at the empty seat, he imagined her sitting there, smiling, as if nothing had changed. It was both comforting and painful, a bittersweet reminder that she had been real, and that she mattered to him more than he had ever expected. Evenings became a ritual of hope and memory. He arrived at the cafe at the same time each day, sat at the piano, and played. He imagined her listening, imagined her joining in, and sometimes he could almost feel her presence beside him. People who came to the cafe began to notice this pattern. Some would sit quietly, letting the music fill their hearts. Some would ask gentle questions, curious about why he played so faithfully every day. He never explained much, only smiled and continued to play, letting the music speak for him. It was a way to honor her memory and keep the connection alive, even when she was gone. He also found himself thinking more about life, about the things that truly mattered. Before she arrived, he had lived in a quiet, ordinary world, content but not fully awake. Her presence had awakened something inside him, a sensitivity to beauty and human connection that he had not fully realized. Even in her absence, he felt the lessons of those evenings at the piano. That moments of joy, no matter how brief, were worth holding on to, and that people could leave a mark on your heart that time could not erase. This realization made his waiting not just about hope for her return, but also about understanding the depth of his own emotions and the fragility of human connections. There were nights when the sadness was overwhelming. He would leave the cafe and wander the streets, unable to find solace in anything. Rain poured down, streets were empty, and the city felt cold and unwelcoming. On those nights, he would think about her face, her smile, the way she had looked at him with quiet understanding. The memory was both painful and beautiful, a reminder of what had been and what could never be taken away. He would return to the cafe, soaked and weary, sit at the piano, and play until his fingers ached. The music became a refuge, a place where grief could be transformed into something meaningful. He also wrote letters, though he never sent them. In those letters, he poured out everything he could not say in person. He wrote about the evenings they had shared, the way her laughter had filled the room, the melodies they had discovered together, and the emptiness her absence had left behind. He wrote about his hope that she would return, about his longing to see her again. The letters were private, a way to process his feelings and maintain a connection to her even when she was far away. After writing, he would fold them carefully and place them in a drawer, knowing that one day, he might find a reason to send them, or he might simply keep them as a memory of his love and hope. As weeks passed, he began to notice other people in the cafe noticing him more. Regular visitors would smile as they walked by, sometimes leaving coins on the piano bench, sometimes clapping softly when he finished a piece. It was not the attention that mattered, but the feeling that he was not completely alone. Even in the absence of the person he cared about most, he was part of a small community, a network of people who appreciated beauty and dedication. This gave him a sense of comfort, a reminder that life continued and that even in waiting, one could find purpose and connection. He started to learn more about patience. Before her departure, he had not thought much about time or endurance. But now he realized that some things required waiting, quiet perseverance, and faith in the unseen. Each evening at the piano became a practice of patience. He learned to sit with his feelings without needing immediate answers. He learned to play through sadness and hope alike, letting music carry the weight of his emotions. The process was slow, sometimes painful, but ultimately rewarding, teaching him that love and longing were not always about possession, but about presence and memory. Sometimes, he imagined conversations with her, as if she were sitting beside him, responding to his words with the same warmth and understanding she had always shown. These imagined moments were comforting, a way to keep her alive in his mind and heart. He would play a melody they had shared and whisper to the empty cafe, as if speaking directly to her. "I am still here, waiting, remembering, wishing you would come back." The words felt like a bridge, connecting the present to the past, the reality of absence to the possibility of return. He also noticed changes in himself. He became more attentive, more sensitive to small details in life, and more willing to embrace emotions fully. Her departure had left a void, but it had also opened a space for growth and reflection. He learned to appreciate fleeting moments of beauty, to recognize the significance of shared experiences, and to understand that waiting could be a form of love in itself. The music he played became richer, infused with the depth of his feelings and the longing that would not fade. Then, one evening, a small sign appeared. A note had been left on the piano bench, simple and unadorned. It was just a few words, but it was enough to stir his heart. "I hope to return soon." His hands trembled as he read it, a mixture of hope, relief, and disbelief washing over him. He sat at the piano, playing the melodies they had shared, imagining her presence, and feeling a sense of connection stronger than ever. The note was proof that she had not forgotten him, that their bond still mattered, and that his waiting might one day be rewarded. From that moment, he held on to hope with renewed strength. Each evening, he continued his routine, but now with a sense of anticipation. He imagined the day she would return, how the cafe would feel alive again, and how the piano would sing with both of them present. The waiting was no longer only about sadness. It was about faith, resilience, and the quiet joy of knowing that someone who mattered deeply had acknowledged his patience and devotion. Even as time went on, he never gave up. He played the piano every evening, letting each note carry a message of longing and love. He continued to watch for signs, small gestures, or whispers of her presence. And every night, as he closed his eyes and let the music fill the room, he whispered a quiet wish into the air, that someday she would return, and the melodies they had shared would once again fill the cafe, bringing warmth, joy, and the fulfillment of a bond that distance could not break. Even though the note had given him hope, he still felt the weight of waiting. Each evening, he walked to the cafe with a quiet determination, unsure of what he would find. Sometimes the streets were empty, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights, and other times they were crowded with people rushing past, unaware of the small world of music and longing that existed in the corner of the city. He felt separate from it all, as if he were in a bubble where time moved differently, measured not by hours or days, but by the melodies he played and the hope that she might return. He noticed that the piano itself seemed to respond to his emotions. The worn keys, familiar and comforting, carried a warmth when he pressed them, resonating with the music that flowed from his heart. Sometimes, he would start a song they had played together, imagining her fingers joining his, harmonizing as they had before. At other times, he created new melodies, letting the music speak for feelings he could not put into words. The cafe staff often paused to listen, and even strangers who came in would feel a shift in the atmosphere, as if the room itself recognized his longing and wanted to offer quiet support. He found himself reflecting on all the little things that had made their friendship special. The way she laughed when a note went wrong, the small nods of encouragement she gave him, and the way she had shared her favorite pieces with him. He remembered the evenings when they had simply sat together, the sound of the piano filling the silence between them. Those moments were now memories, vivid and alive in his mind, and he held onto them tightly, letting them guide his playing and his thoughts. Some evenings, he noticed others trying to approach him, perhaps to offer advice, sympathy, or simply conversation. He appreciated the attention, but his heart remained focused on the hope of her return. He smiled politely, thanked them for their concern, and continued to play, letting the music speak in place of words. He realized that this was a part of waiting, learning to exist in a world that continued on without her, while keeping the memory and hope alive. It was a delicate balance, one that required both strength and vulnerability. As the days passed, he became more attuned to the rhythms of the cafe and the city. He learned to notice the small signs of life, the way the sunlight hit the tables in the morning, the smell of fresh coffee brewing, the quiet chatter of people sharing their own moments. These details grounded him, offering a sense of continuity even as he waited for something uncertain. Each evening, when he arrived at the piano, he brought with him not only memories of her, but also an awareness of the life unfolding around him, a reminder that hope existed alongside reality. Sometimes he allowed himself to imagine conversations with her. He pictured her telling him about the places she had visited, the experiences she had lived through, and the things she had learned. He imagined her smiling at him, reassuring him that their bond was still strong, even across distance and time. These imagined conversations were comforting, allowing him to feel connected to her even in her absence. The music he played became a dialogue, a way to express his feelings and maintain a sense of closeness. He also began to notice the ways in which waiting was changing him. He became more patient, more understanding, and more appreciative of the small joys in life. The act of playing the piano every evening, of sitting with his longing and hope, taught him to slow down and pay attention. He learned that love and connection were not always about immediate fulfillment but could exist in quiet, steady devotion. Each note he played was a testament to his persistence, a symbol of his willingness to hold on to hope, even when the outcome was uncertain. The cafe itself became a character in his story. He watched as the staff went about their routines, the regular visitors shared their stories, and the occasional stranger paused to listen. The space, once ordinary, now held memories of laughter, music, and shared moments. He realized that his waiting was not just about her return, but also about preserving the beauty of those evenings, the way music had connected two lives and created something lasting. Each evening at the piano was a continuation of that story, a way to honor what had been and what he still hoped might be. There were nights when the sadness was overwhelming. He would leave the cafe after playing, walking through empty streets, feeling the weight of absence pressing down on him. Rain or snow, he would wander, letting the elements match the emotions inside him. Yet, even in these moments of despair, he found solace in the music. The melodies he played were not just notes on a page. They were expressions of longing, hope, and resilience. Each evening, he returned to the cafe, knowing that playing was both a ritual and a lifeline. Sometimes he experimented with the piano, creating new harmonies and exploring sounds he had never tried before. The music became a space for discovery, a way to channel emotions and thoughts that were too complex for words. In these moments, he felt alive and present, as if the piano was a bridge between his inner world and the reality around him. He imagined her listening, smiling at his dedication, and feeling the connection they had shared through every note. The other patrons began to notice the transformation in him. They saw a man who was not just playing music but living through it, expressing feelings that were universally understood yet deeply personal. Some would stop to listen quietly, moved by the depth of emotion in each melody. Others would offer encouraging words, gentle smiles, or small gestures of kindness. These interactions, though brief, reinforced the idea that his waiting was not in vain, that the beauty of his devotion could touch others as well. He also reflected on the nature of hope. Before meeting her, hope had been something abstract, almost distant. Now it was tangible, woven into each evening, each note, and each memory. Hope was not about certainty but about trust in the world, in the people he cared about, and in the possibility of reconnection. The act of waiting, once painful and uncertain, became a practice of faith, a way to nurture the bond they had created even when separated by circumstances beyond his control. He began to notice small signs that she might be thinking of him as well. Perhaps it was a familiar piece left on the piano, a message on a shared sheet of music, or a fleeting shadow in the cafe that reminded him of her. Each sign, no matter how small, was enough to renew his determination. The idea that she might return, that their connection had not been broken, fueled his evenings at the piano and gave purpose to the long hours of waiting. As the seasons changed, he adapted. Winter brought snow that blanketed the streets, and the cafe felt warmer inside in contrast. Spring brought flowers and the scent of fresh beginnings, reminding him that life continued and that renewal was possible. Summer brought long, golden evenings, and he felt the music stretching into the warmth of the days. Each season carried its own challenges and beauty, and he learned to embrace them all, finding in them echoes of the emotions he carried within. There were moments when he questioned whether waiting was enough. Doubts crept in, whispering that she might never return, that the piano would remain silent of her presence, that the hope he clung to was fragile. Yet, each time he played, each time the music resonated through the cafe, he felt a quiet reassurance. The act of playing, of continuing to hope, was itself a statement of resilience and love. Even in the absence of certainty, he found strength in the dedication to what he cherished. He began to notice the people who shared the cafe with him, observing how their own stories intersected with his music. A young couple might pause to listen, holding hands and sharing a quiet smile. An elderly patron might tap a finger to the rhythm, connecting with the melodies of the past. A stranger might leave a note or a coin, acknowledging the beauty and emotion of his performance. These small interactions reminded him that even in waiting, life had a way of touching hearts and creating connections that transcended words. His evenings became a blend of memory, hope, and creation. He played for her, for the past they had shared, and for the possibility of a future reunion. Each note was deliberate, each pause meaningful, and each melody a reflection of the emotions he carried. He allowed himself to feel fully, embracing both the longing and the joy that came from remembering. The piano became not just an instrument but a vessel for his emotions, a sanctuary where he could be fully himself. He began to understand that waiting was not passive. It required attention, devotion, and the courage to continue despite uncertainty. Every evening at the piano was an act of commitment, a way to honor the bond they had created and to prepare for the day she might return. It was an ongoing dialogue between the present and the past, between reality and hope, a practice of patience and love that shaped him in ways he had never anticipated. Even as he played, he allowed himself to dream. He imagined her returning, sitting beside him, and playing together once again. He pictured the smiles, the laughter, the shared melodies, and the quiet understanding that they had never truly been apart. These dreams gave him energy, a reason to continue, and a sense of purpose that made each evening at the piano feel meaningful. The music became a bridge, connecting what was, what is, and what could be. And so, night after night, he continued to sit at the piano, letting the melodies flow, letting the hope remain, and letting the memories guide him. Each note carried a message of love, longing, and resilience. Each pause held a space for possibility. Even in her absence, he found strength, beauty, and connection. The cafe, the piano, and the music became his world, a place where time, distance, and uncertainty were suspended, and where the hope of reunion remained alive and steadfast. Even with the note she had left, the days felt long and heavy. Each evening, he walked the familiar path to the cafe, his coat wrapped tightly against the cold, his breath visible in the crisp air. Inside, the warm glow of the lights greeted him, but the piano remained quiet of her presence. He would take his usual seat, fingers hovering over the keys, and close his eyes, imagining her sitting beside him, her smile lighting the room. The music that flowed from him carried the memories, the hope, and the quiet longing that had become a constant companion. Over time, he began to notice subtle signs that she might be near or thinking of him. A familiar melody played by another pianist in a distant cafe seemed to echo their shared songs. A handwritten note left anonymously on a table reminded him of the small gestures she had once made. Even a stranger humming a tune he recognized brought a sense of connection, a small thread linking him to her in ways he could not explain. Each sign, no matter how slight, fueled his hope and renewed his determination to wait. Despite these small indications, there were moments of doubt. He would imagine her somewhere far away, living a life that had no place for him. Fear sometimes crept in, whispering that the note had been a fleeting thought, a promise she might never fulfill. He struggled with the idea that perhaps he had been holding on to a memory that could not return to life. Yet he could not let go. The piano, the melodies, and the hope she had sparked within him were too deeply woven into his soul to abandon. He had learned that some things in life could not be rushed or forced. They required patience, faith, and the courage to continue in uncertainty. The cafe became his anchor, a place where he could process his emotions and remain close to her memory. He observed the other patrons more carefully, noticing their habits, their quiet moments, and their reactions to his music. Some would pause, appreciating the melodies as if they were part of their own lives. Others would smile, leave a coin, or offer a kind word, recognizing the dedication and love behind each note. These small interactions reminded him that waiting was not just about longing but also about presence, attention, and the quiet beauty of shared experiences. He began to experiment with the piano more, letting his emotions guide the music rather than sticking strictly to the pieces they had once played together. Sometimes, the notes were gentle and sad, reflecting the ache of absence. Other times, they were bright and lively, capturing the fleeting joy of remembering her laughter and her spirit. Through this creative exploration, he discovered new ways to express feelings that words could not capture. Each melody became a conversation with her memory, a dialogue carried through sound that connected past, present, and imagined future. Some nights, he allowed himself to imagine her walking through the door, smiling at him and sitting down to play. He pictured the room filling with warmth, the sound of their fingers harmonizing across the keys. These imagined moments were comforting, a way to feel her presence even when she was not there. They gave him energy to continue, a reason to rise each evening and take his seat at the piano, knowing that every note was a bridge to her. He also became more aware of the passage of time. Seasons changed outside the cafe window, and each brought its own colors, sounds, and feelings. Winter snow, spring blooms, summer warmth, and autumn leaves reminded him that life continued. And yet, his hope remained steady. The changing seasons mirrored his inner world. Moments of cold and loneliness, moments of growth and renewal, moments of brightness and fleeting joy. In all of it, he discovered that waiting could be active, meaningful, and transformative, shaping not just his heart but his understanding of life itself. There were evenings when he played until the cafe closed, his fingers moving over the keys with a persistence born of love and longing. Occasionally, he would hear a knock at the door or a step in the distance, only to find it was not her. Each false hope was difficult, yet he never allowed it to extinguish the quiet flame of expectation. He learned to play with patience, allowing the music to carry both joy and disappointment, knowing that each note was a step toward a possible reunion, even if that step was unseen. The staff continued to notice his dedication. They would bring him warm drinks, a smile, or a kind word. Their quiet encouragement was comforting, a reminder that he was not entirely alone in his vigil. They witnessed the way he played, the depth of emotion in each note, and the gentle way he treated the piano as if it were a living companion. In some ways, the cafe had become a shared space of longing, memory, and hope, where his devotion to her presence inspired others to pause, reflect, and connect with their own emotions. One evening, a small, almost imperceptible sign arrived. A familiar piece of sheet music appeared on the piano, left carefully as if by her hand. His hands trembled as he picked it up, and he held it close, imagining her watching him. The music was simple yet elegant, a piece they had never played together but one that felt familiar. He played it slowly at first, listening to the notes and feeling her presence in each chord. It was a reminder that she had not forgotten him, that their bond still mattered, and that the hope he carried was not in vain. With each passing day, he began to balance hope and patience more gracefully. He no longer only waited for her arrival. He also cherished the act of playing, the conversations in the cafe, and the quiet connections he made with strangers and friends alike. He realized that waiting was not just about longing for someone else but also about understanding himself, his capacity for love, and his ability to find meaning in presence and absence alike. Sometimes he would watch the world outside the window, imagining the places she might be visiting, the experiences she might be having, and the people she might meet. He would picture her smiling, happy, and fulfilled, and he allowed himself to feel joy for her, even from a distance. This ability to care for someone without possessing them was new to him, and it brought a depth to his patience and love that he had not known before. Each evening at the piano became a meditation, a way to honor both his feelings and hers, without demanding immediate answers or resolution. He also started to notice how much the cafe itself had become a part of his life. The familiar creak of the floorboards, the smell of fresh coffee, the gentle hum of conversation, and the way the light shifted through the windows. All of it contributed to the rhythm of his evenings. The piano, once just an instrument, had become a companion, a keeper of memories, and a channel for his hope. Each key he pressed was a reminder of what he had shared with her, and what he continued to carry forward in his heart. Occasionally, he would encounter others who were struggling, lonely, or in need of a quiet presence. Sometimes he would play for them, letting the music offer comfort, hope, or understanding without words. These moments taught him that even while waiting for someone he loved, he could still touch lives and make a difference. His devotion to the piano, and to the hope of her return, became a source of inspiration and connection for those around him, weaving his personal story into the lives of strangers in ways he had never anticipated. He began to realize that waiting was not passive. It required attention, patience, and a willingness to be present in each moment, no matter how difficult or uncertain. Every evening, as he played, he was actively participating in life, creating beauty, and maintaining the bond he cherished. Each note carried his longing, each melody held his hope, and each pause reflected his patience. In this way, the act of waiting became a practice of love, a discipline of the heart, and a testament to his resilience. Then, one quiet evening, a whisper of possibility appeared. A friend of the cafe mentioned seeing a woman who looked like her in a nearby street, carrying the same gentle smile he remembered. His heart raced, hope and fear mingling in equal measure. He imagined her walking through the door at any moment, the cafe coming alive with the sound of their reunited music. Though he knew it could still be a false alarm, the possibility reignited his energy and strengthened his resolve. He returned to the piano, playing with renewed passion, letting the music express both his longing and his anticipation. The evenings continued, each one a blend of hope, memory, and creativity. He explored new melodies, revisited old ones, and allowed the music to become a dialogue with her absence and presence alike. He imagined her reactions, her laughter, and her encouragement, and he let the piano carry the emotions too complex for words. The cafe became a sanctuary, a place where he could nurture his hope, honor their past, and prepare for the day when their paths might cross again. Through it all, he learned that waiting was not simply an act of longing. It was a practice of patience, a cultivation of resilience, and a celebration of the moments they had shared. Each evening at the piano was a statement of devotion, a testament to the power of memory, and a reminder that hope, no matter how fragile, could sustain a heart. And so he continued, night after night, letting the music flow, letting the hope endure, and keeping the possibility of her return alive in every note he played. The day she returned was ordinary in appearance, yet extraordinary in feeling. He arrived at the cafe as usual, carrying the quiet weight of weeks, months, or perhaps years of waiting. The streets were busy with the sounds of life, people rushing by with their own stories, unaware that in the corner of the city, a reunion long awaited was about to unfold. He walked through the familiar door, letting the warm air of the cafe envelope him, and his eyes instinctively moved to the piano, as they always did. There she was, sitting quietly, her fingers resting on the keys, a gentle smile on her face, as if no time had passed at all. For a moment he froze, unsure if he was dreaming. Every evening of waiting, every note he had played in hope, every melody that had carried his longing, had led to this very instant. She looked up, her eyes meeting his, and the world outside seemed to vanish. The cafe, the other patrons, the distant sounds of traffic, all faded into the background. There was only the quiet, shared recognition of the bond they had never truly lost. His chest tightened, a mixture of relief, joy, and disbelief. She was here. She had returned. He approached the piano slowly, as if moving too quickly might shatter the fragile magic of the moment. She remained seated, watching him, her eyes reflecting both warmth and something he could not name, perhaps the understanding of everything they had shared and the time apart. Without a word, he took his usual seat beside her. Their fingers met the keys together, and the first notes they played resonated with the echoes of the past. The music was richer, fuller, infused with the weight of absence and the joy of reunion. It spoke of longing, hope, patience, and love, a story told not through words, but through melody. For the first time in months, the cafe felt complete. The familiar sounds of life outside were still there, but inside, the room was alive with something deeper, something that had been waiting for this very moment to manifest. Patrons who had been regular witnesses to his music paused, sensing the change, the shift in the air, the beauty of a story reaching its turning point. Some smiled softly, moved by the depth of emotion, and some watched silently, letting the melodies speak for themselves. He did not notice them. His world was contained in the piano, the music, and her presence beside him. They played together as if no time had passed, the melodies carrying both memory and renewal. There was laughter when a note went slightly off, a gentle correction, a shared glance that spoke volumes. Every movement of their fingers was a conversation, a reminder that the bond they had formed had never been broken. The music became a bridge between absence and presence, a testament to their patience and devotion. For him, the years of waiting, the nights spent imagining her return, the melodies played in hope, all culminated in this moment of shared creation and joy. After a while, they paused, resting their hands on the keys. She looked at him and spoke softly, recounting the reasons for her absence. It had been necessary for her to travel, to handle matters she could not share, and yet she had never stopped thinking of him, never stopped remembering the evenings they had spent together at the piano. Her words were gentle, not excuses, but explanations, filling the gaps of uncertainty he had endured. He listened, feeling a mixture of relief and understanding, realizing that every day of waiting had been worth the eventual reunion. He responded with his own words, telling her about the evenings he had spent at the piano, the music he had played in hope, the signs he had noticed, and the quiet moments of imagining her presence. She listened, her eyes reflecting empathy and a shared understanding. There was no anger, no resentment for the absence, only the acknowledgement of what they had endured and the joy of being together again. Their conversation flowed as naturally as their music, a dialogue of hearts that had remained connected despite distance and time. The cafe seemed to settle into a new rhythm with her return. They played together each evening, sharing melodies old and new, exploring the piano as if it were a living entity, responding to their emotions. The staff noticed the change, the warmth and energy that filled the room, and the patrons felt the difference as well. The music was no longer just a personal expression of longing. It had become a shared experience, touching the hearts of everyone present. Their reunion had created a space of connection, hope, and joy, a living testament to the power of patience, devotion, and love. In the days that followed, they continued to build upon their shared moments. The evenings at the piano were no longer solely about waiting or memory. They became celebrations of life, music, and companionship. They laughed, played, and created together, finding joy in small things. The way sunlight fell across the keys, the subtle hum of the cafe, the quiet applause of those who came to listen. Every note played was a reaffirmation of their bond, a reminder that what they had endured had deepened their connection and enriched their lives. He found that the waiting had changed him in profound ways. Patience, empathy, and resilience had become integral parts of who he was. He had learned to embrace absence without despair, to find beauty in memory and hope, and to understand the quiet power of persistence. Now, with her return, he saw the fullness of these lessons reflected in their shared music and presence. He realized that the experience of waiting, though difficult, had prepared him to fully appreciate the joy of reunion and the depth of their connection. Evenings continued to hold magic. They played for hours, exploring melodies that spoke of the past, the present, and the possibilities of the future. The piano became a canvas for their emotions, a way to communicate without words. Each note was imbued with love, patience, and the understanding that some connections are timeless, resilient against distance, and capable of surviving uncertainty. For the first time in a long while, he felt completely at peace, knowing that what they shared had endured and that their bond had been strengthened by the trials of waiting. The cafe became a haven not only for them but for others who witnessed their music. Regular patrons would come to listen, moved by the emotion and dedication of the two musicians. Strangers sometimes paused, feeling the resonance of hope and joy in the air. The music that had once been a private expression of longing had transformed into something larger, a shared experience of human connection, a reminder that patience and devotion could touch lives in ways that were visible and invisible at the same time. They also began to explore new ways to connect beyond the piano. Conversations over tea, quiet walks in the city, and shared moments of simple joy became part of their daily rhythm. They discovered that their bond was not only sustained by music, but by the understanding, respect, and care they showed each other in everyday life. The time apart had taught them the value of presence and attentiveness, and now, in reunion, these lessons were woven into the fabric of their relationship, deepening its meaning and resilience. Sometimes, they would look back at the evenings of waiting, the silent hopes, and the music played in her absence. They would share smiles, gentle laughter, and reflections on how those moments had shaped them. What had once been a period of longing and uncertainty had become a source of strength and understanding. They realized that love and connection are not only expressed in presence but also in the patience and hope maintained in absence. The piano, the cafe, and their shared experiences had become symbols of endurance, trust, and the quiet power of devotion. As the weeks and months passed, their routine continued with a sense of fulfillment and joy. They played together each evening, explored new melodies, and created moments that were entirely their own. The cafe became a place of celebration, a living testament to their journey, and a reminder that even the most ordinary spaces can be transformed by patience, love, and human connection. Every note played was a story, every pause a reflection, and every melody a bridge connecting hearts across time and circumstance. In the end, he understood that the waiting had not been in vain. It had taught him resilience, empathy, and the depth of human emotion. It had shown him the beauty of hope and the power of connection that transcends absence. And now, with her return, those lessons had come full circle. They played together, laughed together, and shared life together, creating a new chapter that honored the past while embracing the future. The piano sang with their hearts, the cafe held their joy, and the world outside continued its rhythm, all while they cherished the extraordinary magic of reunion. Every evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon. He played with her beside him, letting the music flow freely. The melodies told the story of waiting and returning, of longing and fulfillment, of absence and presence. The piano had been the vessel of their emotions, and now it carried the celebration of reunion. The world outside remained busy and unchanging, but inside, the room was filled with warmth, music, and the enduring truth that patience, hope, and love can survive distance and time. They had waited, they had returned, and they had found each other again, leaving the cafe, the piano, and their hearts singing with a joy that was quiet, profound, and everlasting.